Welcome to Space Startup News Live. I do this live stream every week at the same time, so please tune in if you can. So the format of the live stream is I cover the videos I posted this week. So typically I post a video on Tuesday and then Thursday, and then the weekend I normally do a space news that covers what's happening in the news, focused on space startups usually. So I'm going to go over those videos. I'm going to maybe mention some things I've not mentioned in the videos, either because the video would be too long or I just didn't get around to it in the script. I'm going to bring up comments people have made about the videos. I can answer any chat messages that are related, or any on space startups. And then I'm going to bring up other space news that I didn't cover for whatever reason. And then I usually finish with a preview of what I'm thinking about doing next. So that's the format of the live stream. So like I say, I do this every single week, so please tune in. So let's start with the first video I did this week, which is, put myself in the corner here. Starfish Space, servicing satellites in space. So this is a startup based in the US in Seattle, and they're working on a servicing vehicle, in-space servicing vehicle. So the idea is this vehicle can maneuver around other satellites, it can dock with them, and it can do various services such as replacing components, maybe repairing, inspection, orbital relocation, end of life, which basically means pushing it into the atmosphere so it burns up. So there's all kinds of various missions it could do. So the next mission is Autopup-2. So Autopup-1 launched a few years ago. They had lots of technical problems. It eventually managed to take some images of a deorbit satellite. Autopup-2 will launch on Transporter 14, which launches in about a day from now. So it's going to the deorbit and the Autopup-2 will be deployed. They will drift 100 kilometers away. Deorbit's doing its own mission. It's deploying satellites, and then after they're a long way from each other, Autopup-2 will attempt to catch up to deorbit, inspect it, and then dock with it. And if that happens, that would be the first docking from a commercial private startup with another satellite. So that's the mission. And it launches, I think, in a day from now on Transporter 14. So the mission doesn't really start once it's deployed, because it has to wait for a while for the two satellites to drift away from each other, and then it could take months to slowly catch up to the deorbit vehicle. So yeah, that's an interesting mission, the Autopup-2, and this is just a tech demonstrator. This is just to prove that the software, the guidance, navigation, control, and the docking systems all work, and then after that they can start doing commercial operations. So here's a graphic of the technology used on the vehicle. So it's basically they have an AI vision system for being able to see the satellite, so they can maneuver around it. This is called RPOD, or Remote Proximity Operations and Docking. So you have to be able to maneuver near a vehicle. You have to match the rotations and so on. So there's a lot of sophisticated software you need for that. So it has camera systems on the satellite to do that. It has guidance, navigation, and control to catch up to the satellite. And then it has the Nautilus system, which is the docking system. So it's using electrostatic attacher that can attach to just about anything on a satellite. The satellite doesn't need to have special materials or a docking plate or anything like that. It can Autopup 2 and the Auto Servicing Vehicle should be able to attach to any satellite that's using common materials. And then there's to be revealed. And actually, if you looked at the video, you would have seen this technology here. It's called Manta, and it's a robotic arm that can be used to, I guess, upgrade a satellite or replace certain components. But yeah, that's Manta. So we have another graphic here you can see the servicing vehicle on the left hand side, and if you look at this orange thing, that's the electrostatic attacher. So this is the part that actually docks with the spacecraft. Yeah, then this looks like a deorbit kind of satellite here. So here's the Autopup. It maneuvers around, it matches spin rates and everything, slowly advances, and then uses this electrostatic attacher to attach itself to the satellite. And then whatever the mission is, then it either push it into the atmosphere or do orbit relocation, or potentially in the future it could refuel the satellite, it could replace components, it could change the orbit. There's like a lot of things you could potentially do. And also for military purposes, you could inspect foreign satellites, see what kind of technology they're using. Hi Jackie. Yep, so there's various things you could do, such as inspection. So there's a couple of missions they have planned. They have a mission with NASA that will be to inspect, I think it's 3 defunct satellites. So NASA is going to get the permission from these the customers who own the satellites to inspect them, and the vehicle will approach each one of them, maneuver around them, take images, and then move to the next one. So I think there's three satellites it's going to inspect, and that being 2026. They have a mission with US Space Force to inspect a US military satellite. In fact, they're going to attach to it, and they're going to maneuver while attached, and then they're going to detach. So that'll be interesting. And then, yeah, there's the tech demo, which flies in about a day's time. And that's really just to check out all the technology stack, the software, the guidance system, the satellite, the cameras, and the docking system. So, and then in 2026, they have the very first commercial mission, which is with Intelsat. And Intelsat has lots of satellites in geosynchronous orbit, so that's like way up there, like 36,000 kilometers, and mostly communication satellites. So they get older after a time, and they run out of fuel, and therefore they get moved to a graveyard orbit just out of the way. So the Auto Servicing Vehicle will, as Liam's asking, how much funding have these guys got? So I don't think it's a lot. I think the US Space Force was $37.5 million, if I'm correct on that one. And from NASA, I think it's only $15 million. Yes, $15 million. So not much at all. The Intelsat one, I don't think it's been disclosed. Maybe it's more for Intelsat. So yeah, I don't know. They've got quite a few investors, so they've got some like investment money as well. So yeah, I mean they've got enough to launch these tech demos. This is the second one, and yeah, they got 1 commercial mission and 2 government missions. So they've got a bit of money. Yep. So that is Starfish, and there was a comment here saying the development by multiple firms is essential to the longer-term development of low Earth orbit, off-Earth economy. I wish the firms operating in this area of space great success. So yeah, they're not the only one. You have other companies like Astroscale, which is a Japanese space startup. They have offices in the US and the UK. They also have some kind of servicing mission. I know the UK office is building some kind of orbital debris or inspection kind of mission. You also have space tug companies. You have Impulse Space. You have Quantum Space that are building space tugs. So there's a few companies working on in-space operations, which includes satellite life extension, which I think is the primary mission to begin with. And I think Lockheed Martin did a mission extension vehicle with Intelsat as well. So you got satellite life extension. That's what Intelsat's interested in. So to finish the story with Intelsat, they're going to a graveyard orbit. They're going to inspect it. They're going to dock with a satellite that's kind of like defunct, ran out of fuel. And if that works, they're then going to go to geostationary orbit, dock with a live satellite, a functioning satellite, and push it, give it a little boost. And that should mean that it has an extra year or two of life. So that will be the very first commercial life extension mission that is working on a functioning satellite. So yeah, it's very interesting now. So let's move on to the second video I did this week, which is, bring it up there, put myself in the corner, and this is Diana deployable lunar base. So this is from a bunch of students, mostly in Europe, from universities in, I think, Germany, Spain, Poland, Romania. It's actually someone from University of North Dakota. So a bunch of students, and it was some kind of space station workshop in 2022, and they came up with this lunar base concept. And it's quite, they've spent a lot of time on like planning everything. And you can see from the graphic here that it's broken down into various areas. You've got the solar park for power generation. You've got the main settlement with habitats. You've got a landing site, and you've got radiators for cooling. You've got the receiver station and high gain antennas. You've got transport vehicles, and you've got some ISRU, or in situ resource utilization. That is, you're collecting and processing lunar resources, and from that you can produce water and oxygen and so on. So so let's go into that and look at that in a bit more detail. So this is their plan, and they break it down into 4 phases. Phase 1 is equipment arrival. You land all the habitats, you clear the area, you land rovers and so on, and basically this lasts about 3 years. I've got timeline down here, and they're using Falcon Heavy. And I say in the video, now we've got New Glenn, which is operational. It's flown once already, and you have Starship, which is having some problems at the moment, but I'm sure in 1 to 2 or 3 to 5 years it will be operational. So you have these very, very heavy lift launchers that are commercial. So I think that would replace Falcon Heavy with New Glenn or Starship. You also have the Lunar Gateway, which is kind of likely to be cancelled. So this plan is probably a bit out of date. No, it's not. Sorry, Atlantis is saying, hello, is this live stream only about Diana, or can I ask questions about other news? No, it's about the videos I've done this week, but really you can ask any questions that are, related to space startups or space in general. It's just the videos I've done this week are fresh in my mind, so I can talk about them. But yeah, I mean, you can ask any questions on that are space related. Back onto this. Phase 2 is basically you start landing crew, and the crew is from 2 to 6, and you're starting to land in situ resource utilization equipment. You're starting to prospect, look around the area, find potential sources of water ice, and then as you expand phase 3, you start extracting regolith, you start processing it. They drop in a modular bioreactor So the life support system now start to grow plants. They're using algae as well to process the waste liquid and so on. So you can now produce local food, biomass, edible biomass. You can process the carbon dioxide. And phase 4, it's a full base. You've got 18 plus people. You've got scientists, you've got astronauts, maybe some tourists as well. So that's the concept. And here are the modules they came up with. They have a multi-purpose lab for scientists. You'd have lab equipment and so on. There's a greenhouse module with the bioreactor. This is where this will be part of the life support system. So basically CO2 or waste liquid or whatever, plus lunar resources could be used to grow plants and to generate oxygen. I think also methane as well. You've got a social module, communal area, and also at the bottom of that, you have a safe haven. There's a graphic here, and let me bring up the graphic right now. So here is the habitat. Basically, it's deployed, or it's in a stowed configuration. It's a rigid shell, a rigid core, and then you have an inflatable exterior. So when it's launched flat packed, and then when it's deployed, you inflate the exterior shell with air, and then you have these panels for the floors, and then you could divide each floor with wall panels, so you got rooms, and then you put a regolith shield on the outside. This is about 1.6 meters, and that protects against radiation, and it's going to be quite thick. It also helps buffer the temperature as well, so you don't have the wild temperature swings, and also it's half buried. That helps with the temperature regulation as well. So this is what a module looks like, and if we go back here, you can see there's 4 of them. There's a lab, basically a multi-purpose lab, greenhouse for plants, social module, communal area, safe haven, and also a window module. This is kind of needed for astronauts' mental health. You need to be able to look outside. You need a nice big window. The window turns out to be very, very heavy. It's almost 1 ton, but it's needed so people can, get to see outside. So those are the 4 modules, and over time you could expand the modules, and you've got all the connectors here. Here's the primary hub with the airlock, and you've got two emergency airlocks as well. So that's what the base looks like. And also, obviously, you'd have the power generation. You'd have solar panels. Go back here. You'd have the solar panels, which I think can generate something like 175 kilowatts of power, which is more than enough. You'd have 2 high gain antennas. You'd also have communication satellites, orbit around the moon, so you could communicate with Earth. You'd also have a landing site, obviously, and that would be some way away from the base, so you don't get ejector or debris hitting the base. And you can see here the liquid oxygen can be produced from lunar resources, and potentially methane. You can either basically because in some of the lunar resources you could find some carbon, so you could process that. I think maybe the bioreactor can also produce methane. I'm not sure about that. So Liam is saying, this is all conceptual, isn't it? What is currently seriously developing lunar habitats? As far as I know, Italy is the only company serious about it. Yeah, you could be right. So I want to do a video on the Artemis base camp, which is probably the most likely lunar base because NASA will be funding it and they have more money than anyone else. So probably the Artemis base camp. So I will do a video on that. It's pretty modest base. Diana is obviously more ambitious. But yes, you are right that the MPH, or the multi-purpose habitat, which is being produced by ASI, which is the Italian Space Agency, is the most serious, most practical, and most likely to be funded. In fact, MPH is already funded The NASA 2026 proposed budget, included funding for the multi-purpose habitat. So that is the most serious, I'd say, lunar base. They all have something in common, though, right? They all have a number of habitats. They have rovers. They do ISRU. They have communications. So they have solar panel park. So they're all kind of similar in concept. Just some of them are more ambitious than others. So yeah, and I will be covering more lunar-based concepts in the future. Artemis Base Camp, and there's some others as well. So yeah, what else do you want to say about this while I'm on it? Yeah, I mean, you can watch the video, which is 20 minutes, or there's the PDF, which has all the details. This is how the food management, atmosphere management, and so on. This is basically life support. This is how the life support works, and there's also a section on how the power management system works as well. I haven't mentioned about the fuel cells. Obviously, location matters a lot because you want to be near resources, but you also want to generate solar power. I think all the bases use solar power. In the South Pole, the sun is always very low, and depending where you locate your site, you may have times where there's no sun. So I think in this location, which is Dergalash Rim, which is one of the Artemis candidate sites. There's a various number of candidate sites. So Dergalash Rim is a place where a lot of lunar bases are placed. I think 86% of the time the sun is shining, so you can generate solar power. But you still need a backup system, so they're using fuel cells. Basically, that generates, you split water during the day, lunar day, into hydrogen and oxygen, and at night you do the reverse process, combine hydrogen and oxygen, generate electricity. So that's your backup system. There's the electrolyzer, hydrogen and oxygen, which you can get, water that comes from lunar resources, you split it into hydrogen and oxygen, you can fuel lunar landers, oxygen for life support, and for like plants and so on, and combine it to produce electricity. So, yep, that's Diana. Is there any more slides there? Yeah, and we've seen this graphic already. That's what the habitat looks like. So we had one comment from Wingsley. It's quite a long comment, but I thought it's interesting, brings up quite a few interesting points. It says, as with previously mentioned lunar-based concepts that were either covered by Space Startup News or in my comments, this Diana concept has some impressive ideas and is also missing numerous features that would make it more comprehensive. It's almost amusing how these concepts will overlap on some good ideas, offer some unique ideas on their own, but also have some key things missing that other concepts have. It's easy to conclude that any moon-based concept that requires over 100 billion is not practical and is never going to get implemented. But beyond the obvious lack of funds, there are some other significant issues. A base concept that requires a fleet of powerful ISRU plus 3D printing robots is obviously not going to work unless the moon-based concept has 24/7 nuclear reactor power built in. So I understand, put myself in the corner again, that if you're going to do industrial scale mining on the moon, you probably do need nuclear power, nuclear fission reactors. But to begin with, for your very first mine, that is probably, it's not industrial scale, but you can still produce useful quantities. I think you can get away with solar, but obviously for industrial scale, where you're mining hundreds, thousands of tons of material, you probably do need to use a nuclear fission reactor. So yeah, this nuclear power would definitely have to be in the multi-kilowatt range, but more likely would be megawatt capable. The combined efforts, US, Canada, Europe, and Japan, and possibly India and other countries would probably not be sufficient to pay for such an expensive operation. And of course, all this assumes that all of these countries are working together on such a project. 3D printing is seen as very advanced and impressive space-based building technology, but implementing this technology on the moon will surely also prove to be cost prohibitive and may take extensive time to make reliable. It would also shortly require nuclear power. The more, the better. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got to start small, and then you learn, you make mistakes, and you basically you work your way up the learning curve. So obviously, to begin with, these bases would be funded by national space agencies, governments. They wouldn't be commercial. The cost is too high. But you've got NASA, ESA, JAXA. The Artemis Accords has over 50 countries currently funding are currently contributing to Artemis Accords. So yeah, for the first 10, 20 or more years, space agencies are funding these projects for sure. And he goes on to say, building a base camp is seen as desirable. Building a permanent or semi-permanent moon base is seen as even more desirable. Building a larger permanent moon base capable of housing a dozen astronauts seems overly ambitious and premature. The most common thinking I've seen among thinkers on the internet would be to start very small, 4 to 6 astronauts, and to very gradually grow from there over a period of 20 years or more. Another small concept would be Sabrina Kerber's Haven concept, which would be best suited for 4 to 6 astronauts and favour excavated regolith over 3D printing. And then he goes on to say, NASA is currently underfunded, and this situation would grow much worse in the near term. Whether or not future leadership in Washington reverses the ongoing funding crisis remains to be seen. Basically, and yeah. So he's saying there's like funding issues and it's too ambitious and you need nuclear power, which, may all be true. I don't think anyone thinks these lunar bases are going to be commercially viable for decades to come. But I still think it's useful to learn how to use these technologies, the autonomous robots, the ISRU, and so on. And yeah, you're probably going to start very small, 4 to 6, something like Artemis Base Camp, and then maybe gradually over time you can build the base, you can add modules. Just like the ISS. The ISS didn't start with all those modules. It started with one or two modules, and then over like 20 years, you add like Columbus, you add Kibo from JAXA, Columbus from ESA, and you gradually make it bigger and bigger. You add more solar panels. And so I think it's going to be the same with the lunar base, right? You start with 1 or 2 modules, and gradually over time you build it up. So I think that's perfectly viable way to go. And at some point we'll have nuclear fission reactors. I've covered Antares on this channel, which are working on a 60 kilowatt nuclear reactor. Lockheed Martin are working on a 40 kilowatt reactor. So I think we'll have nuclear reactors at some point. Anyway, that's Diana. So let me move on to space news. So I did this the other day. This was released yesterday. So there's three items I covered. First of all, I covered Intuitive Machines, and you can see it here on the side. So they had 2 landers land on the moon, but both of them tipped over. The first one I think was more successful. They got data from all the 10 NASA payloads. So I'd class that as a partial success, partial failure, depending on how you want to look at it. It did tip over, but NASA got data. I think NASA was happy with the first mission, IM-1. IM-2, I think we can all agree, was a failure. It tipped over, it died very quickly, and I don't think there was much data at all. So I'd call that a failure, IM-2. So they have an IM-3, I think it's IM-4 as well. But they're looking at other services as well. They're looking at lunar data relay satellites, and they've got funding from NASA for that already. Other companies that are also have lunar landers are working on other data services, and that will be my video on Tuesday. I'll talk about that later. So Ants Alatis says PLD Space recently signed and finalized a contract with the French Guiana Spaceport to start construction of their Mura 5 pad. They also released 2 renders of how the pad would look. Yes, PLD Space is a European space startup based in Spain, Spanish startup. and they're working on their Mura 5 rocket, and then later they have the Mura Next whole family of rockets. Some of them heavy lift. They have a heavy version and a super heavy version, and so it's very impressive. The vehicles they're working on, and they also have a capsule they're working on as well. So yeah, and hopefully they will be launching the end of this year. A lot of the European space startups are now pushed off into 2026. PLD Space may actually launch in 2025. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But definitely PLD Space, very impressive European space startup. So that's Intuitive Machines. They're working on lunar data relay satellites, and basically not just lunar landers. They're diversifying. I think you'll see a lot of space startups diversify rather than just do launching, rather than just doing lunar landers. They'll do other services as well. And the second news item is the exploration company. So you can see on the left, you've got this mock-up for a crew capsule. So the exploration company is unique in Europe in that they just do capsules. That's it. So they have a cargo capsule that has a contract with ESA to go to the International Space Station. They've got some milestones they have to meet first, but if they meet all the milestones, they're flying to ISS in 2028 with cargo. They signed contracts with Vast Space for the Haven 2 resupply missions. Those are cargo missions to Haven 2. They can't fly to Haven 1. There's only one docking port, and Crew Dragon is connected to that. But Haven 2 has two docking ports, so you can have Crew Dragon on one port, and then the Nix vehicle, that's what their cargo vehicle is called. The Nix vehicle can dock to the other port. They also have they signed some kind of agreement with Axiom Space. I'm not sure it's a full cargo agreement, but they've got some kind of agreement. They also have agreement with Starlab as well. So basically, they have lots of agreements to use their Nix cargo vehicle on commercial space stations. And now they've got this design for a crew capsule, which would be, they evolved their cargo vehicle into a crew vehicle, just like SpaceX did with their Cargo Dragon, evolved it into a Crew Dragon. So that's very interesting. The exploration company is well funded. They have hundreds of millions of euros, probably the most well funded European space startup, I think, at the moment. And we have from Ants Alatis, what do you think of the design, and what could we expect when could we expect the first launch of Mura 5? So end of 2025. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's supposed to launch in 2025. And as far as I'm aware, I've not heard any different. So it's going to be sometime in 2025, probably the end part of it. Yeah, they're launching from the French Guiana, the ESA spaceport. So yeah, I in terms of the vehicle, I know after Mura 5, the moving towards the Mura Next family of vehicles. Some of which will be reusable. So the first stage comes back, it has landing legs and so on, and they have Mura Next Heavy, and then a Super Heavy with side boosters, all of which come back and land. So it's, in terms of ambition, I don't think there's a European launch company that is more ambitious than PLD Space. So yeah, we'll see how it goes with their first launch, hopefully later this year. Yeah, so that's the exploration company, and I also then covered. What else did I cover? Oh yes, I covered. So here is the subscale demonstrator from the exploration company. As you can see, it's I don't know if you can see it, but basically this is a re-entry capsule. So there's a heat shield, and it's attached to Transporter 14, which is flying in about a day. So once all these satellites have been deployed, the second stage is deorbited with the capsule still attached. And once the deorbit burn is finished, the capsule is released, and then it will re-enter and hopefully splash down in the Pacific Ocean. And there's a recovery vehicle, salvage ship, that's already left port. It left a couple of weeks ago and will be in the splashdown zone, and will recover this vehicle, and then they can do inspection and make sure that the heat shield worked and so on. And this is the subscale demonstrator. If this works, then they can build the full size Nix vehicle. This is 2.5 meters diameter. The full size is 4 meters. So that is, it's called Mission Possible. It's flying in about a day's time on Transporter 14. And yeah, so good luck with that. And Marty the Martian is saying, I can see small space planes like Dream Chaser making capsules less popular in the future. Yeah, I mean, it's a pity Dream Chaser didn't make the cut in the Commercial Orbital Transport Services, COTS program. It was cargo, Crew Dragon and the Starliner were selected by NASA. Dream Chaser had a crewed version, but that didn't make the cut, which is a pity. But maybe for the next competition, they will get selected. They're already going to the International Space Station with their cargo version of Dream Chaser, and that should be launching later this year. I mean, it's due to launch, I think, on a Vulcan Centaur to the International Space Station. I think they have 11 contracted missions, but they also were working on a crewed version of Dream Chaser. So maybe that'll come back. I'd like to see that. But yes. So what else did I cover? I covered the exploration. Oh yes, Vada Space. Vada Space, and you can also see Vada Space here on the side. Here it is. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see the pointy thing. That's actually the Vada Space capsule. They're building their own in-house capsule now. I'll bring myself full screen here now. So they're building their own satellite platform. So they have the re-entry capsule, and then that's hosted on a satellite platform that's built by Rocket Lab. And now they're building their own. So they're vertically integrating, they're building everything. And that's one way they can scale. They can have more missions and they can produce more pharmaceuticals. So Vada Space, if you're not familiar with them, they manufacture pharmaceuticals in microgravity inside their spacecraft, their capsule. And once they've manufactured all the pharmaceuticals, it detaches from the platform, the satellite hosting platform, and then re-enters and lands safely. They collect all the pharmaceuticals, give it to the customers, and that's the mission. So they've done 3 of those missions so far, all successful. The capsule landed safely. They recovered the pharmaceuticals. So now they're building everything in-house, vertically integrated, and they're going to try and scale. And also, I mentioned the FAA has given them a 5-year license, unlimited landings. So they can land as many times as they like, as long as they don't change the mission profile too much. And they're landing in Australia. There's a lot of empty space out there in the outback. It's very safe. And yeah, so they're flying tomorrow, their 4th mission on Transporter 14. Mission Possible from the Exploration Company is flying tomorrow, Mission 14. Autopop 2 is flying tomorrow on Transporter 14. And I didn't mention it, but also Gilmour Space, which is the Australian launch company, also building satellites, and they're also on Transporter 14. So there's a lot happening. Other space news, yeah, talking about space planes, Germany Polaris space plane has secured some more money, over 5 million euros in funding. So there's another space plane. Eclipse are working, Firefly are working on their Eclipse. That's a medium launch vehicle. As you can see, they're building the hardware. Structure team performed fit check on the first stage propellant tanks. Once complete, we'll send it to the test stand before finishing final integration and shipping to Wallops Island for launch. So they're getting closer to their medium launch vehicle, which will be a competitor to Falcon 9. And also Rocket Lab is working on Neutron, which is a competitor to Falcon 9. So Falcon 9 will have some real competition, in the next 6 to 12 months, hopefully. Fingers crossed. And Marty the Martian is saying, FAA, what does an American organization have to do with landing in Australia? I had exactly the same thought. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I did think, what has the FAA got to do with Australian, something landing in Australia? I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know, but apparently they need permission from the FAA. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They would need a license for launch, but not for landing. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, other space news as well. This came out of the blue. I don't think anyone was aware of this. That Honda, the company, the Japanese company that makes cars and other things, they have a reusable vehicle, successful takeoff and landing experiment of reusable rocket experimental vehicle. So if you watch the video, it takes off on landing legs. It hovers. It goes 300 meters up. It hovers, and then it comes back down and lands, which is amazing. So this is experimental, and I don't think Honda has decided whether they're going to green light making a bigger version of this or not. But considering that the test worked fine, I think it's quite likely they will green light this. And maybe this will be a competitor as well. Who knows? But that came out of the blue. And then this also came out of the blue is Vortex. Europe getting serious about improving access to space. Dassault Aviation with their Vortex space plane. So here's another space plane. So you've got Dream Chaser. You've got the German space plane called Aurora, I think. Basically this one here. And now you've got this third space plane called Vortex. So interesting times in commercial space. So anyway, that's the space news this week. In terms of what I'm going to do next week, I'm thinking, I'm definitely going to do a video on Firefly Ocular. That's a new service they're providing. Those only came out the other day. And like I was saying, quite a few of the space startups are now diversifying rather than just doing one thing, like launching. They're doing satellites, or rather than just landing, they're going to do data services. So I'm going to cover Firefly Ocular. Then I'm going to do, so there's various things I can do. One of them is I want to do something on Ceres, which is an asteroid. Technically, I think it's a dwarf planet. There's a paper on extracting resources from Ceres, which you don't know. It could be 25% water, which means there's more water on Ceres than there is on Earth. So I want to do a video on that. And I have various other videos I'm thinking about doing. So anyway, that is the space news this week. Thank you. Oh, yeah. And Marty saying, my Honda doesn't hover, disappointing. Or maybe in the future, we'll have some hovering cars or whatever. But thank you for joining, and see you the same time next week.